and we come back from our short recess to consider item 10 on the agenda, which is motion 1 by Councillors Steele and McDonald. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Provost. This motion hopes to get the ball rolling on changing the law so that the bodies which I would argue have the biggest amount of do the biggest amount of damage to the footpaths, such as gas, electricity, internet providers, utilities, are obliged to return payments to a far higher standard when finished their work than they are called upon to do at present. I firmly believe they have the capacity to do this far more in any event than councils do. Councils which are asked to repair the damage with extremely limited funding, and while utilities record results like these ones I pulled off the internet yesterday, Scottish Power 2023, an operating profit of 545 million. We could do quite a lot with 545 million. British Gas, a relatively modest 159 million, but that was down from £1 billion a year before, BILLION, £1 billion. You get the picture. I believe, Provost, it's long past time that these bodies whose work leave pavements crisscrossed with backfilled on different levels should be getting their hands in their pockets via taxation or levy or by whatever works to properly make good their work as is set out in the motion. There is one specific point I wanted to highlight, Provost, and that's the effect poorly repaired payments and footpaths have not just on our constituents with mobility issues, which is certainly the case, but also on those who have a diagnosis of dementia. I probably wouldn't be bringing this motion before the Council today were it not for the work done by the Johnston Dementia Friendly Group, led by the really quite inspirational Colonel McShane, who do a huge amount to support constituents and their families and have opened my eyes to so many different issues which people coping with a dementia diagnosis have to put up with. And one of these is their perception of flat surfaces such as floors and or pavements. Pavements which are left in poor condition by utilities could, and I was going to say theoretically, but in every likelihood they do, exacerbate this. It's unnecessary, and as it's mentioned in the motion, I think you can make the argument that it's discriminatory. This is a point I hope the relevant minister, which I also looked up yesterday, and I believe is one Louise Hay, will take on board and give consideration to if this motion is passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Councillor McDonald.
I'm happy to support this motion, particularly because the Disability Resource Centre and the STAR Project and the Tannahill Centre are all in the Ward 4 area. They're all dealing with people who have mobility barriers, young women with prams and children, people who are walking to get to where they need to be, or people who are maybe using disability vehicles. There's a whole lot of people who would want to use the pavements, and they need to be in as good as, if not better, condition than the roads, perhaps, particularly when we want to encourage people to be more active and outdoors and walking. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any amendments to the motion? Councillor Eddie Devine. Amendment, Eddie?
No, it's I'm going to make a comment on it.
Okay.
It's I would caution on, and hopefully bring in Gordon. I would I'd be conscious that first-time repairs are not a good idea. They're not a good idea. They will sink. We had in Glenburn, we had that mob up doing the cabling, and it's now beginning to sink. I'm going to vote for it, but I'm just being cautious that we'll still end up having to dig it up. Having dug up a few holes in my time, and I'd refilled them. I would consider that we should be cautious. We should be I filled them in. The bodies have never been found. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm sure the mover and seconder will take your comments on board. It's a fair concern, I would say. Sorry, Gordon.
Please.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Devine. You're correct. The key aspect of reinstating the road is about compaction. It's about having the right material at the right level, because the utilities are at different levels. The motion is absolutely correct. There is no specified width. So obviously this motion is looking for full reinstatement, and I suppose just as a given for council, if motions passed and obviously this legislation were to be changed, there would just be the expectation that that compaction aspect would need to be core, and it would just obviously extend it to the full width. So you're absolutely correct. That is very much critical to the reinstatement of any road, and obviously the width of that is obviously what the council was asked to consider here.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. Okay, Eddie? Yeah? Okay, can we agree the motion then? Agree. Item 11 is motion 2, that's by Councillors McMillan and Gilmour. Councillor Ian McMillan.
Okay, thanks very much, Provost. You know, it's not the most important issue we'll ever speak about, and certainly not the most important issue that we'll speak about today, but it's certainly a real concern for our people that are affected with this. Now, I well know that rats have been about for a long time, and I'm sure councillors have dealt with the issue over the years. But certainly in the last year or so, I've certainly dealt with it more and more. It seems to be a really big issue and concern to local people out there. Now, I could say 2 or 3 things about why I think that's happened, but I'm not coming from any knowledge at all, just anecdotal what I hear going about my business. So basically what I'm asking to happen is for council officers to go away and have a look at this and see why it is happening and why there seems to be more. I'm not keeping figures or anything like that, and I'm only principally speaking about my own ward, but I have spoken to other councillors who are having similar problems or similar issues in their wards. So I would just like to be council officers to go away and have a look at it, and probably more importantly, what can be done about it in a larger scale. I know we've got services that will come along and put down poison and bait boxes and things like that. That might help that individual, and that's great. That's fine. But it seems to me to be a wider problem. As I say, we're never going to stop rats. We live in the same planet. We need to learn to coexist. But what we need to try and do is to discourage these creatures from hanging about people's back doors, getting into people's houses, hanging about their bins. And it has to be some kind of advice, I think, to people rather than just dealing with it in a piecemeal way. There has to be some kind of, I don't know if we have some kind of policy or some sort of guidance, and if we work with some of our partner agencies to issue similar guidance. But the people that contact me, it's quite horrific to have these things in your house, or your kids can't go out to play because they're in your back door. So as I say, I'm not going to go into the full reasons, and if it does get full support, absolutely fantastic, and I would leave it to the officers to come back. And I know Councillor Nicholson, I'm not preempting what you're going to say. I hope you haven't changed your mind for your conversation just last night, but I know Councillor Nicholson's got a small amendment, and I know he hasn't said it yet, but I'm more than happy to support that, because I think Councillor Nicholson, it's not been mentioned yet, but it certainly kind of beefs up, if you like, what the motion that myself and Councillor Gilmour are putting forward. Thank you.
I'll get Councillor Gilmour to second it, and then I'll let Ian come in with his amendment, and then I'll ask if there's any other amendments. Good. What's Councillor Campbell? Oh, sorry. Councillor Gilmour.
Thanks, Provost. Formal second, reserve the right for further comment. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we have an amendment from the SNP group from Councillor Michelle Campbell. Who's seconding your amendment? Councillor Audrey Doig, seconder. Do we have any other amendments? No? Okay, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. I think myself and my ward colleague, Councillor Nicholson, sometimes do merge into one.
That it's been distributed? Has it been sent to everyone? Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Provost. This is just a small fundamental amendment, which I don't think is particular issue. I'm very grateful to Councillor McMillan indicating that already. It's just to really firm it up just slightly so that, you know, whatever that report looks like, that it adds legal context to it as well. Just so that when the board is looking at it, that all aspects can be looked at, so that it's not just about what solutions there are, the means to those as well. So it's just a slight amendment to the last paragraph. So I hope from what's been indicated that the mover and the seconder of the motion will accept it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Doig.
I'd just like to formally second and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, Ian, you've checked the what you've been saying, and you're okay with accepting the amendment? Okay, can we agree the motion then and move on? Sorry, Councillor Doig, my apologies. I do have a couple of hands.
Provost, I had my hand up to speak, and so did Councillor Devine.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I just was off my screen for a minute.
Right, and that's okay. I support the principle of the motion, and I'd like to just add a few comments of my own. I think Councillor McMillan and Councillor Gilmour are quite right. Councillor Gilmour and I have occasionally worked on various issues within our own ward, Ward 9, and the amendment does talk about solutions and means and solutions. Means and solutions is important because you tend to find, certainly in Johnson Town Centre, it seems to be older tenemental properties where you've got mixed tenures between private landlords and council tenants that seem to be hotspots. I mean, I think tenemental properties have got a lot to offer. We live in a tenemental property and it was very old. But I think there could be better working, cross-working, I would say, Provost, between housing, the housing department and the environment department, and in relation to the mixed tenure officers that we have, because you've got this conflation of different issues. And of course, tenemental properties were not built for the level of bins that we need now for very, you know, to recycle. So I think you've got a conflation of different issues. I do think there's been a slight increase, I would say, from my own experience within my own ward. I think the solution might well be a greater focus on maybe the council needs to have a specific rodent control action plan. Under the 1949 Pest Control Act, it's a core duty of the council, so it is a serious point. We have a statutory duty. It's pest control for councils. It's not an add-on. It's actually one of our core duties, I would say. So I think we need to look at it seriously. I thank Councillor McMillan and Gilmour for bringing the motion forward, and I'm sympathetic to the amendment, but I'd like to thank you for giving me the chance to make these points. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I'll also be supporting it, but I just want to share a couple of things. There's a particular problem that I have in Charleston Square, and the problem we have there is that they're not council properties, it's a housing association, and all they tell their tenants is it's a council problem, which it's not. And also there's a problem when we've got 4 in a block and maybe 3 of them are sold and the other one's a council tenant. We can't do anything because the other 3 would have to pay, pay their share. So as I say, I agree with the motion, but there is going to be problems with that.
Yeah, your comments are noted and probably appropriate. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, happy to see this motion in front of us today. But some of these answers that we're likely to see in a future report are kind of obvious, such as contaminated bins and overflowing bins, and bins not being emptied, usually bins without lids in this case, and general litter bins being emptied, but anything round about the bin being left behind. Council policy has a lot to answer for in some of these regards, but as well as actions of some tenants who undo the good work of others. So yeah, let's look at this and see if we can get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen.
Thanks, Provost. It's probably to say I'm not going to repeat what some of my colleagues have said, and obviously my colleagues in the ward I'm in myself have had the same issues, but I've got to thank the department for certain things. I took to them there just a couple of weeks ago regarding somebody that's personally cited and regarding about an infestation of rats in this area. And the department's plan of action was absolutely superb, I've got to say that. And I took it back to the constituents and they asked me, would I make it clear to the department, thank you for the actions that they're taking. What the result will be yet, we don't know, but even the actions, and I've got to thank that. So, but I support the motion, thank you.
Well, that's good to hear, Sam, and it would be good for the director to take that back to the staff and let them know. Okay, so Councillor Cathy McEwen.
I simply want to echo Councillor Mullen's information there, because I have nothing but respect for the pest control officers within this council, and any time that I have brought anything to their attention, they have dealt with it extremely well. And I understand the motion, I'm listening to that, but I do want that said because they have been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Okay, I think that's all. Everyone had their say. So can we, do any of the seconders want to come back in? No? No? Okay, can we agree the report with as amended? Thank you. That brings us on to item 12, which is motion 3 by Councillors Devine and Mylet. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I don't intend to read out the whole thing, or I can't say the word inimical. So I'm just putting it to the council, and I hope that it's supported. I can't understand. Well, I can understand. What I don't like is rich people being able to start up a company and engage in supposedly politics. You know, but they're only there to stir up trouble. And you know who I'm talking about, but I don't want sued.
I've said nothing.
Mark's told me to be quiet.
Lips are sealed. Okay, thanks, Councillor Devine. Councillor Mylet. Hope he's still with us. Will?
John will second it.
Provost, I'll second the motion then, if that's okay.
That's okay. So can you record Councillor Doig as being the seconder?
Yep.
It's a shame about him not being here. I wish I had known. Okay, I think we have an amendment anyway.
I've put it in the group chat, but I think
Okay.
it's also getting circulated.
It's being circulated.
It's from Councillor Leishman, seconded by Councillor McGonigal.
From Councillor Leishman and seconded by Councillor McGonigal. Okay, Councillor Leishman, do you want to speak to your amendment?
Have you got it? I haven't got it.
Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. So, Councillors Devine and originally Mylet have identified a perceived loophole in our democratic system. The most interesting aspect of this motion is its original movers. I have to emphasise that, seeing as the seconder has changed. Namely, 2 independent councillors who did not stand as independent candidates. I guess if anybody can spot a democratic loophole, then they're the persons that will. Let me illustrate my point with an observation.
Oh, we were doing so well today.
Bring it on.
Okay. Let me illustrate.
Councillor Leishman, sorry.
Yeah, no problem, Provost. Let me illustrate my point with an observation. Ward 6, for example, in May 2022, over 1,100 people cast their first preference vote for a Labour candidate. That alone was enough for them to get a Labour voice in this council, without even counting transfers. But they don't have a Labour voice in this council. Instead, they have a non-party aligned councillor whose most pressing local priority tends to be the Middle East, and who is himself one of the Labour group's fiercest opponents in this chamber. I do wonder which is the greater affront to democracy, that the voters of Ward 6 do not have a Labour voice despite having voted for one in sufficient numbers, or that Reform UK is a private limited company. No, I doubt that Councillors Devine and Mylet are the right persons to teach on democratic probity. As far as Reform UK goes, to be honest, Provost, I don't care that Reform UK is a limited company. The Electoral Commission has already passed it, so I can't help thinking that it's not really any of my business. Neither is it any of my business how the SNP or Labour or the Liberal Democrats or any other political party is constructed, providing that the Electoral Commission approves it. The only hardship I can identify when I was doing my rather tiresome research on this issue is actually inflicted upon the members of Reform UK themselves, in that they don't get to elect their own leader. But again, that's really their lookout. If this is an attempt to defang Reform UK, I doubt its prospect of success. If anything, this party has proven itself to be rather practiced at rebranding itself, if not exactly reinventing itself. No, Provost, I don't like the thought of banning political parties for such nebulous reasons. And on a personal note, please let me make this, I do resent that in defending democracy, I've had to speak up for my opponents, Labour and Reform, but that's between me and my conscience, I guess. And that's all I'm prepared to say on this. Thank you.
Yep, happy to second and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andy.
Andy.
Oh, sorry, Provost, I was having a conversation, Councillor Devine. Yeah, I find it passing strange, Councillor Leishman's objections to this motion. First of all, the motion does not call on a ban in Reform UK as a political party. It bans limited companies registering as political parties, and there's a massive, massive difference in that. Most political parties do have elements to them, usually the side that deals with their own merchandising, which is a limited company, and that's quite common. I think that would apply to most of the big main parties these days. This is not what the motion is here for. Now, I know that Councillor Leishman is the main Tory attack dog, and, you know, I've heard he's, he might even be promoted. He seems to be relishing his new role as Russell Finlay's representative on earth. So, I mean, really, by the number of motions that are on this agenda today, he really is Russell Finlay's representative on earth. So, read the motion, Councillor Leishman. Read the motion. It does not call, and I would not be in favour of a ban on any political party, however much I may disagree with them. And that's not what this motion is calling for. Read the motion. It's calling on companies that are registered, limited companies who register as parties, to be banned, because, as Councillor Devine has said, this is an extremely dangerous process. It monetises the electoral system. It allows people who have got the money to set up companies. In 2017, when Reform UK was created, it was described by its creator in the media as, quote, an entrepreneurial political startup, unquote. That's business language. That's the language of stockbrokers. That's the language of hedge fund managers. That's not the language of political parties. Political parties grow organically from people who share certain values and beliefs. They coalesce together and take the view that we've got something to offer. We're going to form a party to promote these aims. This is not the case with Reform UK. And I think Councillor Leishman knows that this is the case, because he actually admitted it, because he admitted how many reincarnations has Reform UK been through. And I think there's real dangers to this. And it ill befits me, as a lifelong supporter of independence, to stand up for the integrity of British democracy. But it has to be said, as long as we're in the UK, I think the systems have to be as democratic as they possibly can be. And although things have moved on since this motion was lodged, because last weekend Reform UK had their conference, and I did note there was some publicity. Lo and behold, they've handed their party back to their members. Well, that's good. But I don't want this to set a precedent, Provost. I don't want this to happen again. And it's not just about what Reform UK, how they organise and how they operate, but it is to do, Councillor Leishman, with the kind of policies they promote. They promote simple solutions to complex problems. And I'm surprised, really surprised, given the devastation and political havoc that Reform UK wreaked on your own party at the general election. I'm really, really surprised that you object to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doig. Just to confirm, are there any more amendments before we move on to other speakers? Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. I resonate quite strongly with what Councillor Doig had said there. For me, it's the issue of having to retrospectively fix the issue. You know, setting up as a company and then having to backpedal because of democracy. I don't think that any political party or individual that decides to stand in any sphere of government, that's the way that politics should be done well. Also, in keeping what Councillor Doig had said, you know, I obviously have a particular stance on Scotland within the Union. However, if we are to be a part of it, and, you know, part of the narrative being that we are supposed to be exemplary in our legal systems, our justice systems, our political systems, and that, you know, world-renowned to be looked at, I think that this actually really puts a tainting on that. And I think that it's a moral repugnancy, and it is a deep-feeded bit of disease in our society if we allow for these things to continue, in particular when the Reform UK leader in his own commentary 5 days ago stated that in terms of the general election, that it was marred with, quote, loopy and at worst, quote, extremely racist candidates. That is unacceptable, not just legally, but morally. There are lots of things that I find morally difficult because of my own personal values. However, as a society, we have legislation there to protect people. And who's going to be next on the agenda then for the attack? Is it going to be individuals who are most vulnerable, be it that they live in social circumstances that are difficult, or disabled communities? Because I'm an intersectionalist by just the person that I am as an individual. But when we have, and so I accept there are parties out there that I don't align with, but I respect the position for them to exist within a democratic society where they keep themselves fundamentally on the side of legality. When you're stating you have extremely racist candidates, that is something to be ashamed of within our political system. Thank you.
I'm not going to follow it with Alec because he obviously has been put up to it. But anyway, people that voted for, I'm glad you've seen how many people voted for me, and they will get exactly what they voted for. I'm a Labour man. I will always be a Labour man. Maybe not this Labour Party, but I'll always be a Labour man. And for, I mean, you've got a leader, a current leader up until tomorrow, I think it is, who was prepared to throw a guy in hospital. I suppose that's democracy in the Tory Party. So I'll not take any lessons from Alec or anybody else. However, I ask you to vote for this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion by Councillor Devine, now seconded by Councillor Andy Doig, and an amendment from Councillor Leishman, seconded by Councillor McGonigal. Could members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor Devine's motion or Councillor Leishman's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour.
Motion.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Hood.
Motion.
Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Motion.
Councillor McDonald.
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment.
Councillor Maguire.
Motion.
Councillor McGurk.
Motion, sorry.
Councillor
Didn't
McMillan.
Motion.
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet. I don't think Councillor Mylet has managed to rejoin us. Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Rodden. Councillor Rodden.
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Steele.
Motion.
Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion. I have 34 for the motion, 4 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay. Move on to item 13. It's motion 4 by Councillors Jacqueline Cameron and Jennifer Adam. Councillor Cameron.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, there's times when we write motions to council and we know it's just another letter to another government who isn't going to listen. And sometimes you think, is this just opposition for opposition's sake, or will I actually achieve something? Because I don't like yaboo politics, and I know that the public don't either. They want solutions, they don't want a bun fight in the chamber. But when something is inherently wrong, it needs called out, and it's our duty to our constituents to do it. Via the Fairer Renfrewshire Committee, we do what we can locally to help with fuel poverty, but all the winter connections programmes in the world are not going to be enough to help older people with what's coming this winter. So I do think it's important to add our voice to those who are angry that one of the first austerity measures from a party that promised no austerity was changing the goalposts in the winter fuel payments. Not just Labour voters, not just Labour members, but indeed Unite the Union and delegates at the recent Labour conference won a vote to ask for this policy to be reversed. We did a bit of preamble last week at the Leadership Board in a disagreement in economics and Barnett consequentials. And let's consider that word consequential literally as a consequence of, because there is no denying that this decision was made without discussion or consultation with the Scottish Government and a devolved power handed over with an almost 90% cut to that which was expected. And that is the consequence for our older people in Scotland. So I applaud the Labour Party members at a conference who have put their head above the parapet and made their voice heard. However, it seems Sir Keir Starmer still isn't listening. Scotland's winters are harsh, but we're energy rich. That's not fair in this country, and it doesn't bear thinking about that older people will suffer strokes, heart attacks, falls, and even hypothermia due to not being able to afford to turn their heating on. Now, I know my colleagues in the Labour benches, I know their values and principles, and I know that they care about their constituents and have their interests at heart. It's clear to see right now there's an internal conflict in the Labour Party, but I would urge them to support this motion, just as we have supported their motions on issues like the National Care Service. Sometimes you just need to do the right thing. So let's urge the UK Government to scrap this policy, allow the Scottish Government to follow suit, and let's listen to Sharon Graham, General Secretary of Unite the Union. Don't target pensioners and leave the super rich untouched. And finally, let's prove to people that voted Labour that that promise of change was more than just a lie on a leaflet. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Jennifer Adam.
I'll reserve the right to come back in, please, Provost.
Okay, I know that we have one amendment from Councillor McMillan. Who's your seconder, Councillor McMillan? Councillor. Okay, so it's an amendment from Councillor Clark. Councillor McMillan's a seconder. Do we have any other amendments? We have an amendment from Councillor Leishman. Yes.
Provost, I'm just wondering, it's for the sake of efficiency, would it be possible for me to make my motion, I think it's item 20, as an amendment to this? It's really the same subject.
I did consider taking them together, but I thought they were significantly different.
Right.
Enough to not take them together.
Yeah. Could it be presented as an amendment?
I think I'd rather just keep them as separate motions.
All right.
If you don't mind. But thank you anyway for your suggestion. I do welcome it. Councillor Neil Graham.
Yeah, if Councillor Leishman wants to move it as amendment, he can move it as an
He
amendment.
can, well, it's up to him.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's what he's wanting to do by the sounds of it. So
it'll still be item 20 on the agenda, yeah.
If it's still going to be item 20, I'll speak on it at item 20.
You could certainly withdraw the item, I think.
Yeah.
I think we'd be okay. Yeah, I'll just get Mark to clarify so that we're
Please.
absolutely certain, okay?
Thank you, Provost. Councillor, you are obviously entitled to move any amendment you wish to move, subject to competency. So if you wish to move the exact wording of item 20 as your amendment, then you are free to do so, subject to the, as I say, the Provost ruling on competency. The issue it creates is item 20 remains on the agenda. So therefore, it would stand to be debated again unless you withdraw it when we come to that particular item.
Right, okay, so there is the option of withdrawing it. In that case, I'll present it as an amendment if the Provost will allow it.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, if it's competent as a motion, I would say it's competent as an amendment.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay.
I will withdraw motion, I forget the number, but item 20.
Okay, so you're going to withdraw motion 11. Correct?
And present the same wording as an amendment.
Present this as an amendment to this item. Okay. So Councillor Leishman, do you want to then speak to your amendment now?
I should probably clarify my seconder. John Gray was my seconder, but he's not here. Well, can I ask for someone else to second it?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Okay.
Will be the seconder.
Thank you, Provost.
Sorry for being rude, Provost, but I think Labour put an amendment first. Yeah.
Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you, Provost. Council, our amendment says this. Council acknowledges that care for pensioners should be at the heart of every political party's values, and that was expressed by Jacqueline Cameron. Council notes that new full state pension will rise by $460 a year from April 2025. Council accepts that because of the financial incompetence of SNP and Conservative governments in the current financial climate, including trust economics, difficult decisions must be made in order to repair and grow the economy. Council notes that overall public spending has increased under the new Labour government. Council notes that the Scottish Fiscal Commission confirmed that the 24-25 Scottish Government budget increased by $691 million, and that in-year negative adjustments are dealt with in reconciliations in the next financial year. The decision by the Scottish Government to means test the pension age winter heating payment in Scotland this year is a decision taken by SNP ministers. Council further notes that the Scottish Government were advised by their own advisers as far back as March 2024 that the new devolved Scottish pension benefit should be means tested. Council reaffirms its current policy of encouraging pensioners to claim pension credit in order to boost their incomes, as well as ensure they qualify for cold weather payments. Provost, I understand the call on the SNP for us to look at this, but I am appalled that the Conservatives think that they can speak to this, given the way in which trust economics has affected the incomes of elderly people across this nation. The food prices went up, everything went up. Older people have suffered because of this last Conservative government, and I'm absolutely appalled that they feel that they can speak to this issue given their record. And it's because of them that we are in the situation we are in now. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies for the confusion about the move on the second earlier. There was a lot of motions and amendments floating about yesterday, so I apologise for any confusion. Look, let's be honest with you, that this is a very difficult subject for anybody that cares about people. And I think, you know, we're all round this table because we do care. We care about our communities and we care about the most vulnerable. So it's a very difficult decision. Obviously, it's not a decision that's been made by anybody sitting in this table, around this table. It's been made elsewhere, and we have to, I think we have to acknowledge that. And we know that pensioners can be, not all, but can be some of the most vulnerable people in our society, and I think we've all got a job to look after them, particularly people who are on their own. I think if pensioners are still lucky enough to have a partner or a husband or wife, you know, they've got two lots of income, but if you're on your own, it's a bit of a struggle to live off a pension, and maybe even a small works pension. And I think, you know, I know particularly women tend to have a smaller works pension, and that sometimes can just be enough to take them over that level of pension credit. And I think we need to remember that the new policy is still looking after the poorest of pensioners, those pensioners who rely on pension credit. So we're not abandoning the Labour Party are not abandoning the poorest of pensioners. But I do understand there will be some people who are just over that threshold of pension credit will struggle as a result of that. There's no point in hiding it. It is a very, very difficult decision. And I don't envy the people who have to make decisions. We have to make decisions in here on a regular basis, whether it's administration or opposition or whatever, we still have to make decisions in a daily, week-to-week basis. So we know how difficult it is. There was a care home, as we know, was closed just a few months ago, and that was a very difficult decision for a lot of people here. So we can have sympathise with those kind of decisions, although this is on a much larger scale than anything that we ever have to deal with. We spoke about this subject last week on the leadership board, and we did mention that the finances were available to the Scottish Government to mitigate this, but they've chosen not to, and I haven't heard anything different to tell me that's actually the case. Now, given that we're going to be hearing shortly from the Conservative members, and again, I don't want to personalise it because nobody on the back there had anything to do with any economic crisis. It was their colleagues down south. But let's be honest with you, this decision has been made because the Conservatives trashed the economy. You know, when I hear about Liz Truss, I feel as if it was a bad dream and it never actually happened. But unfortunately, it did. And it left the whole place in absolute chaos. And that's why we have a Labour government. You know, anybody that walked round the doors, we were told we need to get rid of the Tories. We need to get rid of the Conservatives. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that there's better times lay ahead. We've got a budget coming up in October, which I'm sure there'll be some tough decisions, but hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm much more positive with a Labour government than I have been with the Conservatives over the last 14 years. And I'd just like to reiterate that the last part of our amendment here is to make sure, and I know the council have done this for years, but we need to re-emphasise it, make sure pensioners get claiming pension credit, because it is a scandal, and that lays firmly at the door of the Conservatives, who have let 1 million people, almost 1 million people, not get the benefits they're due. For some people that can be up to £3,000, plus it opens the gates for other benefits as well. So happy to second the amendment on behalf of the Labour group.
Make sure that
Yes.
I've got that right.
Yeah, sorry, apologies, Councillor Leishman. I had noted to raise this with you as well when we came to consider item 20. So at the leadership board, there was a paper, as I think Councillor McMillan was indicating there, that was considering a number of matters. And as part of that, there was a decision by the council to look at what support the council could do to ensure as many people in the local area were prompted to take up the option of pension credit. So effectively that part has already been considered and decided last week. So are you insisting on that part in relation to your motion? Thanks.
Provost, just to clarify, are you asking this of me or instructing? Sorry.
Well, I'm asking it of you because I suppose it is my opinion. I will have this clarified by Mark. I feel as if that makes your motion incompetent because you're asking the council to do something that is already being done.
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Provost. Yeah, I was at the...
I want to make the right decision. I don't want to do you an injustice. So I just want to...
The issue in relation to the 6-month rule is inconsistency, and the problem becomes if the words are not exactly the same, then arguably you bring yourself into a 6-month rule because something was literally decided last week. What I'm flagging to you is that in terms of the thrust of that paragraph, that was already agreed as part of that, but the wording is not exactly the same. So therefore that creates that issue. And you'll be aware that the view that's previously been taken by the Provost is that if part of a motion or amendment is caught by the 6-month rule or is not competent, it renders the whole part rather than the Provost having to pick through and establish the bits that can still be taken forward. So therefore, the question is, are you insisting on that paragraph for that reason? If you're not, it leaves the rest of the wording to be considered as your amendment.
Well, thanks to both yourself and Mark for clarifying it. Sometimes these processes are not as straightforward as they initially appear. And yes, I was at the leadership board last week when this was discussed, and either I or my colleague did speak on it. So if anything, I'm rather relieved that Councillor Nicholson and I had the same idea. So I will consent to removing that last paragraph.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillors.
Thank you. That makes everything easier. Okay, do you want to speak to the motion as you have amended?
Yes, thank you, Provost. And if I can just make a little quick retort to the comments from the two Labour councillors. And although I do appreciate Councillor McMillan's much more courteous tone, I really don't know how both of them managed to get a straw man that size into this room. If you want to talk about Liz Truss, we can at another time, but I'd much rather stay on topic. Much has already been said on this topic nationally, Provost, a lot. So much that I doubt I can add any real insights into it, but I will try. This decision by the Chancellor to punish the elderly is far too harsh, too cruel, perhaps even mean-spirited. And please allow me to debunk one of the myths around this cut. This is that this will only affect a few rich toffs. Not so. I've read that the means testing will kick in at £11,500. I don't think I really have to delineate that that's not a lot of money. That's a low amount of money. That's a very low amount of money to start having cold weather payments stripped of you. To put it into perspective, if you won't mind me being a bit catty, this amount is roughly the equivalent of a clothing gift voucher to the Chancellor or the Deputy Prime Minister. Nope, the Chancellor has to repeal this decision. The Labour Party's own inquiries indicate that this will lead to the premature deaths of thousands. So how can the Labour government pursue this policy when they themselves know that? And the Scottish Government deserves some censure with its equivalent decision too. When we chose devolution in 1997, incidentally which I voted for, it was to have greater control over our differing needs and priorities and demographics in Scotland. One of those differences is that Scotland has an older population. The average age of a Scot is 43, while in England it's 39. We have proportionately more older people, and our policies should reflect that. And here's one of the most obvious differences between Scotland and the rest of the UK, so much so every Scot has bemoaned this. It's so much colder up here. The cold weather payments are much more needed than they are perhaps in the south coast of England. So no, the Scottish Government has not been instructed to enact this cut. It has chosen to do so. I would suggest it's time to rethink.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Leishman. Councillor Graham.
I'll second it and reserve the right to come back in, Provost.
Okay. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thank you, Provost. I feel sorry for Ian having to answer for the National Labour Party. And Ian said, as the Labour Party keeps saying, it was a difficult decision. No, it wasn't it? The decision should have been, we're giving the pensioners their money. I might have got it at one time. They didn't find it a difficult decision when they were accepting suits, dresses, flats, holidays, or a £4 million bung from the Cayman Islands. Didn't find that difficult to do. So I will be voting for this motion here. I just find it, I hope, Alec, that meets your approval of being a Labour person and not this current lot.
Thanks, Councillor Devine. Councillor Audrey Doig.
Thank you. Just a few things to point out has been said today. The credit application for pensioners is closed. You can't apply for pensioner credit anymore until well into next year. And as far as getting a pay rise, the pay rise comes for pensioners in April. And what do we have before that? We have at least 5 months of harsh winter. When we have a summer like we've had, the indications from people that I basically take who have more knowledge than me, that we're in for a harsh winter. And if we have a harsh winter without having pensioner credit payments for their fuel, it's going to be even harder to keep these people warm. So that basically is going to come after they've paid enormous fuel bills. I didn't talk during yours, Ian McMillan. Could you please not talk during mine? Well, take it outside.
Excuse me, I'm chairing the meeting. Calm down, Councillor Doig. Please, councillors.
I don't have to be told to be calmed down by anybody.
Retain your dignity. Please speak through the chair. Carry on, Councillor Doig.
The other thing that's happened within the last year, which the Tories were responsible for, is there's tax happening in pension. For the first time ever since I became an early retiree, my pension that I got from Renfrewshire Leisure has been taxed. So I'm getting less money now than what I did last year. And this year, I basically turned a pensioner to get pension from the state. But that'll be taxed as well, so even less money. And come April, yes, we'll get an increase, but we'll get increased tax as well. So it will not be the increase that everybody's saying it's been. And lastly, I'm sitting here today wearing red. Why do you think I've done that today, Labour colleagues? Because the only socialist party left in Scotland is SNP. It's no Labour.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy McEwen.
Can I just say, first of all, I didn't declare an interest in this motion, as no pensioner should have to declare an interest in any discussion regarding the winter fuel payment. Councillor Clark, you said pensions will rise. But so will prices. And that most certainly will include fuel. Not all pensions will rise in the same way, some getting more than others. Councillor McMillan, yes, I heard you say that you agreed that some pensioners may suffer. Heard you saying that, because they're a few pounds over. Absolutely correct. But no pensioner should suffer. Full stop. I am old enough to know the values that Labour did put forward in the past. But I don't recognise Labour anymore. I simply don't recognise. I can't believe in this. So that's it. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, I saw the Labour amendment here, and the only word that came to my mind was apologists, to be honest with you. They could have framed it differently. They could have actually had a different angle on this. They could have expressed their discontent with it. They could have expressed that, but they didn't. They've now turned into an apologist group for a national government, which they clearly have no control over. They clearly have no say in what they do. The Labour MPs in this area lined up to vote to strip our pensioners of their winter fuel allowance. You know, so they've got no place on this to argue the winter fuel allowance was needed to be done. Now, I was watching some of the Labour commentators, and to be honest with you, I was actually shocked how poor they were at their conference and being grilled on these issues. As somebody who takes an interest in politics, I heard this phrase rolled out, there is no alternative. Now, I remember that phrase, Tina. That was Thatcher's. Thatcher used that constantly. There's no alternative. But now Labour's using it is to defend their policies. Now, the thing about the winter fuel payments is they did have choices. They could have not done it this year. They could have included it in their budget. They could have actually did it next year as part of their package. And if they want to say that the people's triple lock's going to save them, it won't save them from winter. But they could have done all that. There was choices. There's clearly no impact assessment was ever done on it. And Councillor McMillan's right in one point. It's not the tossing the yachts or the ones that live in Marbella we're talking about here. We're talking about the ones who just a pound over to get the pension credit. They're the ones that are going to be the ones that suffer the most. And there's always a grey area. Because when the DWP and the UK government set rules of benefits, they've always got a hard guillotine line on everything. Not a penny more. You don't get council, you don't get this, don't get that, because you've got a pound more in your bank. They're the ones that are going to suffer here. And that's the ones we're talking about. We're not sitting here bleating on about the ones that are able to live in Spain and the rest of it. They shouldn't, in some respects, I agree with the point, they shouldn't get it. But the way the Labour government did it was appalling. So I'm kind of concerned because when I saw one of the spokespersons being asked this question, are you not concerned about the deaths that might occur over winter? The response that came from that was, well, we understand there may be a wave of emotions, but we need to do difficult decisions. That's how they dismissed dying pensioners. A wave of emotions might come off the back of that. Not try to stop it from happening, not try to reconsider it, but we know there'll be a wave of emotions off the back of these dead pensioners. That tells me about the ethics and the morality of a political party who, amongst all the decisions they could have made, they almost broke their neck to take the winter fuel payment off pensioners as one of the first acts to show how tough they were in dealing with the budget. They didn't consider the fact that people might think that's the wrong thing to do, but the responses off the back of it, and even Keir Starmer, I mean, I sit and call him Sir Grift a lot now, because every single thing about him as he's been interviewed about all his expenses, his donations, his money, never once has he considered about looking at the winter payment again, or looking at how we can maybe mitigate it this year and deal with it going forward to next year. They go on about the triple lock as if that's going to save them. So as I say, the difficulty we have here is that we have a deaf, blind and dumb government now in place who's immune to opinions. And I say, I was watching the Labour Party conference because I'm a kind of geek like that, and I'm saying my vote goes to Sharon Graham of Unite. She was fantastic. She expressed the view of common, decent people within the Labour Party and I think across the country. But again, Starmer was on a plane going to New York, you know, something like that. So they scattered out of the conference hall. They moved the debate from the Monday to after Starmer had his key to avoid it. This is the Labour Party we're now facing. Duplicity, deceit and lies, right from the first couple of months of in office. What are we going to expect going forward? So as I say, they're not going to get away with this. And if my advice to the local Labour members here is, I think you have to look at how you're going to defend your government's policies going forward. Don't become apologists for them. Do the right thing and vote in the right way when it requires you to do so, with your conscience and with how you see ethics and morality going forward in this council. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Marie McGurk.
Thanks, Provost. I think Councillor Nicholson's actually probably covered the angle of this well. I apologise if you can't hear me too well. But fundamentally, I cannot believe that the Labour Party would do this to our elderly community. We have a huge number of people that this is going to impact on. And I'm working with officers now to see how we can mitigate some of that if we possibly can locally. But we can't do it for everyone in the UK because everyone will be affected by this, huge numbers. And you ask the GPs who are already shouting and bawling about this, the problems that they're going to face in their surgeries when people come unwell because they can't keep their heating on and they require think they can require medication to make up for it. It's fundamentally wrong. And they're our biggest group that depend on us as elected members to represent them and to make sure that we look after them properly. And you failed miserably today.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Councillor Andy Steele.
Thank you, Provost. A few points I'd like to throw into the mix, if I may. The first line of the Labour amendment in the context.
Sorry, could you put your microphone down a wee bit?
Is that better?
That's better.
The first line of the Labour amendment reads, Council acknowledges that care for pensioners should be at the heart of political parties' values. In the context, that is ridiculous. Bluntly, that's all I want to say about that. The second line is inaccurate. It says, Council notes the new full state pension will rise by £460 a year from April 2025. Let me bring up a page. That figure refers to the post-2016 pensioners, Provost, and of them, 51% will qualify. The pre-2016 cohort, the rise is £356, and overall, only some 27% of pensioners qualify for the full £460. 73% of pensioners will get a princely sum of £354. Colleagues have already pointed out it's a long, dark, cold, damp winter. If you can make £354 increase, see you through it. You're a better man than I. To boil it down to its brass tacks, if there's an increase in cash terms for some pensioners, and I have shown not all, increases in food, heating, the cost of living mean there is no increase whatsoever in purchasing power. In fact, quite the reverse. This is Councillor Clark's favourite expression over the last 3 years is economic incompetence. This is economic incompetence. People who need it. People who don't need it tended to give it to their families or spend it locally. In every possible way, the universality of the payment was a good thing. To take it away, to means test it, I just can't see I cannot see the logic in it. And we've also heard, the final point, something of a philosophical digression. We appear to be living in Schrodinger's Britain and Schrodinger's Labour Party. Councillor Clark mentioned absolutely correctly that everyone suffered under the previous Tory economic vandalism. Don't disagree with a word there. Everyone, except of course for the SNP government in Edinburgh, which uniquely should be able to mitigate each and every ludicrous policy decision that comes floating up the country like a bad smell. Try and have it both ways. It's absolute nonsense. I would finish up by saying it gets forgotten in the political back and forth that we're sitting in what I believe is the 6th richest country on the face of the planet, arguing about £300 for pensioners over the winter. Again, make it make sense, because I can't. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Steele. Councillor Ben Smith.
Thanks very much, Provost. I do think, to coin the phrase of the rest is politics podcast, if anyone watches it, we should try and disagree agreeably, and I will try, but sometimes it's difficult when things are as sensitive as this. Having said that, I do appreciate Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's comments during some of her contributions about the shared values that some of us in the Labour Party have with some of the members in the SNP, and I do think that's genuine, and I also have the same opinion about some of the SNP's members' commitment to their constituency. Having said that, I think then, Councillor Cameron, you then strayed slightly into the realms of myth-making and political hypocrisy by saying that the Labour Party have just won an election on a campaign and leaflets based on lies. And in the lead up to this meeting today, I was kind of wondering what the tone of the SNP might be towards us after the Labour Party's victory in Scotland. And I was having a look through some of the SNP's manifesto pledges over the years, from 2007, 2011, 2016, 2021, I think. The top of the bill headline news is always the SNP will abolish the council tax. The SNP will replace local taxation with something else. The SNP will scrap local council tax for under 22s. The SNP will close the attainment gap. We've been here for 17 years, so if you're going to bandy about the allegation that we are liars when we've been in government for 5 minutes, I think you should have a look at your record and Holyrood over the past 17 years. And if the claim is honestly that you can't do any better than what you've done, then frankly you should step aside for people who have different ideas. To come to Councillor Audrey Doig, I was a bit, it was breathtaking, shall I say, to hear Councillor Doig complain about behaviour in the chamber, to be honest. But just on a point of clarification, you can still apply for pension credit after today, but it's just with the change in the winter fuel payment being taken into account. And I understand your point, Councillor Doig, about paying tax on pensions, but that's because your income is then over the threshold, which I imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, has been set by your government in Holyrood. And I also imagine that the increase, I don't know anything about your personal finances, Councillor Doig, but I also imagine the increase in your income might be due to the triple lock. And I don't imagine that it's the SNP's policy to get rid of the triple lock or to change the council tax bands anytime soon. To come to Councillor Nicholson, contributions, they spoke about the Labour Party being grifters. I find that as equally breathtaking as Councillor Doig's comments, considering your party or figures high up within your party are still under criminal investigation about embezzlement of your money, of the SNP's money. So I think you should maybe reflect on that before commenting on the Labour Party. And to speak about the Prime Minister taking a flight to the UN to discuss the situation in Lebanon and Israel is again absolutely shocking, considering Sam and Nicola Sturgeon used to pop in a helicopter anytime they had to go and meet some members down at the Forth Road Bridge. I think overall there needs to be some reflection on the results of the local of the general election, and I kind of like Councillor Nicholson, I too am a bit of a political geek, and because I mustn't have had anything better to do, I was watching some of the SNP conference and I was absolutely amazed by the tone of one member in particular, Christine Graham, MSP, who said that the people of Scotland hadn't thanked the SNP for what they'd done for them, and there was an awkward silence in the hall after it because it was pretty breathtaking. My final comment, if you'll indulge me, Provost, is on Councillor Devine. Now, I'll go back to my previous comment and try to be agreeable in my disagreements with you here, Eddie, but to suggest that you're the real Labour man in the chamber and the rest of us aren't, I think does need to be challenged somewhat. I've been a member of the Labour Party since I was 14, which has encompassed 3, I think, UK leaders, including Jeremy Corbyn, who at the time you claimed to be a big supporter of, and at the time I also as well. I do not remember once seeing you out campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn or the Labour Party, and in fact, more of us in the Labour benches have campaigned for you to be a Labour councillor, Eddie, than you have yourself, which I'm sure we regret now. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Provost.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Thank you very much, Provost. Actually, the issue of tax is something I was going to mention. Councillor Audrey Doig, you were talking about how much tax you're paying, and as you well know, last time I looked, it was set, taxes devolved to the Scottish Government, so you may want to have a word with your ministers about that one. And just for a wee bit of clarity, Councillor Clark mentioned earlier on that the Scottish Government has actually got the funding this year for the pension age winter heating payment. So the decision not to pay, to means test this year, sits with SNP ministers. They made the decision. The funding is there this year. It's not been taken away. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jennifer Adam.
Thank you, Provost. You know, I've listened to what my colleagues have had to say here today, you know, and our political leaders don't always get it right. But as local elected members, our job is to represent the people that put us in these chairs here today. You know, obviously I chair the Integrational Joint Board for Health and Social Care. We have reports come back all the time that explain the pressures that we face under winter, and that's under normal circumstances. Our care at home team are so vigilant and already going in, and they're trained to obviously notice how the older people are doing with regards to having their heating on in the first place, and making sure we try and mitigate where we can with regards to that, because unintentional consequences of this just makes it so economically wrong, because it's going to turn up at our doors at A&E. Now, when I used to hear about elderly people dying over the winter, I actually didn't realise that the majority of this is coming from falls and trips that they don't recover from. And I'm not talking about slipping in black ice when you're outside. I'm talking about not being able to turn on your heating, your body becoming rigid, and as a consequence, you take a fall that you struggle to recover from. And that is reality. I noticed out of the 50 Labour MPs that abstained, there was only one who actually voted against this. And he actually stated the reason he was voting against it was because it was life and death for his constituents. And that's reality here. That's what we're looking at. So I would encourage us all, I mean, I noticed, I wrote down here that our partner organisations, with regards to what Councillor Clark had said, the deadline has passed. It was the 16th of this month. So, Renfrewshire Partners, we've got Renfrewshire's Advice Service, and we've got the carers, we've got the Carer Centre, and we've got Renfrewshire Cab. Now, they've done an additional 60 slots to try and do benefits checks and ensure people can try and get on pension credits this year. But the reality is, with such a short deadline, it's very, very challenging. So there's going to be thousands of pensioners who aren't going to qualify for it this year. What else was I going to say? So I was just going to say also regarding your party conference, obviously, with it being unanimously agreed that, they didn't support this, you need to take on board what the people that voted for you want. The court of public opinion will judge you in this, it will be remembered. The consequences of elderly people in their own homes suffering over the winter is unforgivable. And I'm in no doubt that my Labour colleagues got into this to make a difference. We all did. We all want to help, so be on the right side of history here, stand up for what's right and vote for the motion.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Neil Graham. Someone else get their mic.
I think there's an echo. Is that right? Thanks. Thanks, Provost. Since 2010, consecutive Conservative governments have honoured our commitment to pensioners. It took a few months for the so-called Labour Party to grab this money away from vulnerable pensioners. And where's the money going to? It's going to highly paid train drivers getting a massive pay rise on top of their 60k a year. The SNP and Labour can blame each other all they want. You both are at fault, and shame on you both. Labour are taking money from pensioners in England and Wales, while the SNP are doing it in Scotland. We, as a Conservative group, will be voting to condemn both governments. You are both at fault. Councillor McGurk talks about mitigating the effects here in Renfrewshire, and also Councillor Adam did as well. It's the SNP that are taking the money off pensioners in Renfrewshire. Labour Party done it in England and Wales, and it's the SNP's political decision to do it here in Scotland. And I'd just like to say, he's coming back in anyway. I'm concerned about some of the language as well regarding Councillor Nicholson to somehow put deaf and blind people in with dumb, so-called dumb people. I think that's that kind of language shouldn't be in the chamber. As someone who has got a very close family member who is who's deaf, I resent the fact that Councillor Nicholson is putting them putting them in the same sentence as so-called dumb people. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you, and I think he should apologise for that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Nicholl's actually up next, so you can address that if you.
Thanks, Chair. I think thanks, Provost. I think everyone realises the context which I made that statement was in reference to a political party, not individuals. It's just a point of information about Councillor Smith. He flagged up the council tax reform as a manifesto commitment the SNP didn't deliver. If my memory serves me correct, it didn't deliver it because Labour and the Tories blocked it in the Scottish Parliament. If I'm remembering right, so please don't come along here using examples to have a go at the SNP when in fact your colleagues in the Scottish Parliament are doing everything they can to trip up the Scottish government in delivering its manifesto commitments. So you're not going to get away with that in future if you think you're going to come along here and not realise your colleagues are responsible for a lot of things that the Scottish government doesn't do. So I'm just wanting to point that out as a point of information, Provost, at this point, because I think it's very important. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Steele.
Thanks again, Provost. I'm a little bit insulted that neither Councillor Smith nor Councillor Neil Graham had a go at me in their riposts. So I'm going to come back in and try again. I've been left out. I feel like I've not done a good enough job. But it is, and it's no funny, I know that, but it's fascinating in a way, because I've sat here for 7 years and I've listened to Labour councillors, not all of them, absolutely not all of them. Councillor Smith's correct, let's disagree civilly. Blame the SNP government for SNP government in Edinburgh decisions. I've heard them blame the SNP for Tory government decisions in London, and I'm now hearing them blaming the SNP for Labour government decisions in London. It is quite astonishing, the power the SNP wields. I wish somebody would give us some of that power, it would be great. Councillor Smith claims Labour have only been in power a short time, one of your statements. I was correct, that is absolutely true, but I do want to point out, politely, that the new Labour government has had time to commission and produce the Darcy report, which Mr Streeton is taking and running with at great pace to introduce more of the private sector into the NHS. If you've got time to do that, I would argue you've got time to do an impact assessment of removal of the winter fuel payment. And I'm going to have a dig at the Tories here. I don't believe the members present, except Councillor Hughes McLaren, were here when the universal credit uplift during COVID of £20 whole was removed, and the Tory group did not support our motion. Might have been Councillor Doig's motion, I don't remember who moved it, condemning that. So it's history, but it's a little difficult to take their protestations at face value today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Okay, we have no other hands up. No, last chance before we move on. Okay. Mark.
Thank you, Provost. We have 2 amendments, so there will be 2 rounds of voting. It will be a roll call vote. The first vote will be in respect of Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's motion, seconded by Councillor Adam, and that is against the amendment proposed by Councillor Clark and Councillor McMillan. Whichever of those 2 matters is then successful will go forward to a second vote in respect of the amendment from Councillor Leishman and Councillor Graham. So on this matter, can members please confirm whether they are voting for Jacqueline Cameron's motion or Councillor Clark's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Burns. Councillor Burns. Can't hear him. Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine. Motion. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Audrey Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour. Councillor Gillian Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Abstain.
Councillor Hood.
Motion.
Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Abstain.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Abstain.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Amendment.
Councillor McDonald.
Excuse me, amendment.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal.
Abstain.
Councillor Maguire.
Amendment.
Councillor McGurk.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery, Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet. Councillor Mylet, I think you're on mute. Okay, move on. Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Rodden. Motion. Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Amendment.
Councillor Steele. Councillor Steele.
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion.
Councillor Burns for the motion as well. I get cut off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Mylet, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello, Stephen.
To reset the computer, this has been off.
Thank you. I have 24 for the motion, 7 for the amendment. With 4 amendments, the motion is carried. Sorry, 10 for the amendment. I do apologise. Yeah. So 24 for the motion, 10 for the amendment, 4 abstentions. The motion is carried. So we now move forward to the second vote. So on this occasion, it is the motion by Councillor Jacqueline Cameron, seconded by Councillor Adam, with the amendment from Councillor Leishman, seconded by Councillor Neil Graham. Can members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's motion or Councillor Leishman's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Abstain.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour.
Abstain.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Abstain.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Hood.
Motion.
Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Abstain.
Councillor McDonald.
Abstain.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Maguire.
Abstain.
Councillor McGurk.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Abstain.
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet.
Motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mylet. Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Rodden.
Motion.
Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Steele.
Motion.
Councillor Hannigan. Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion. I've got 25, 10 and 4. That's 25 for the motion, 4 for the amendment, 10 abstentions. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Next item is item 14 on the agenda. It's motion 5 by Councillors Shaw and Hughes. Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Provost. I just want to take a few minutes to congratulate Kitlanewt Primary, One Rent and Active Schools on their Corporate Parenting Positive Partnership Award that they received last month from Who Cares Scotland for their work to support care experienced children within the school to be more active. And speaking to Mrs McKechnie, the amazing Hedy at Kitlanewt Primary, she tells me that this award was achieved through creating a partnership, creating, planning and delivering a weekly care experience sports club, which is an opportunity for care experienced children to participate in activities that directly promote their well-being. Now, the school uses a wide definition for the club of care experience, ranging from families on the edges of care to those who are adopted or looked after by the local authority. Everyone involved in the partnership has received Communities at Care training from Who Cares Scotland, to ensure that everyone understands care experience and the unique barriers that care experience pupils may face in relation to participation in extracurricular activities. Transport to and from the club is provided to ensure there are no barriers preventing care experience pupils from attending, and care experience attendees are also able to identify a friend who they want to attend the club with them to try to mitigate any possible stigma of attending. The partnership also want the children to go on from this club into one of their other after-school clubs that are provided by Kirtlandnewt Primary. When this is successful, as it has been, they then look at the wider community pathway into One Wren community clubs or the community sports hub structure. They work together to promote lifelong sport and active participation in their lives. This is developed further to include providing positive aspirations for the children's future, alongside additional leadership opportunities across the wider school linked to sport to ensure that children can recognise possible future career pathways in this area. As a partnership, the team has listened and responded to the voices of care experienced pupils by consistently seeking feedback, for example, when the children are able to ask for particular games or sports. The request for food is known as a regular concern for some of our young people and was a non-negotiable when starting the club. Children are able to ask for specific fruits or healthy snacks, and staff work collectively to ensure they bring along whatever the children have asked for. Finally, I mean, that's all well and good. That's all what's happening behind the scenes. But what do the young people think? I suppose most importantly, one pupil commented, "It is the best moment of my week, and I am so happy I now attend a club in the school." Another pupil who attended the clubs, who has attended the club since its inception, and was perhaps a wee bit more talkative, says, "I like how it's very interesting. There's lots of stuff to do. It's a good club to come to. This is the best part of the week because you come here and you do different sports with the coaches, and it's really good to come because you meet new friends and everything. It just feels like everyone is nice and they're just very nice to each other. I don't know what to say. They are kind, they are nice, and they are positive. I thought it would help me by exercising and help me get me into more sports than usual." And they summarise by saying, "It makes me feel good, really deep down. It feels emotional good." Can I just say thanks and congratulations to everyone involved in getting this club up and running. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, John. I think some of us could be doing with some of what the children are getting that makes them feel that good. But yeah, it's a lovely award to get, isn't it? And congratulations to all of them. Really, really well done. Councillor Lisa Marie Hughes.
Thanks, Provost. I'll be brief. I want to associate myself with everything that Councillor Shaw said. Obviously, I'm both a board councillor and the chair of One Wren, and you're not supposed to have favourite things your organisation does, but I don't think the impact of active schools can be understated. They very quietly work in every school in our communities, working with all the children, but really targeting children who need that additional support. And I think this programme that was set up, a large part due to the tenacity of the senior leadership team at Kirtlandnewt, I have to say, no stone is unturned when it's providing better things for their young people. I think when this was set up, it shows the kind of more holistic approach that active schools brings. People think about being sports, and I think what Councillor Shaw said there tells you more about the feelings and the community involvement around it. I'm just so proud of them, and this is a new programme. This has been just over a year, and Kirtlandnewt is the first place it's been done. I know that other schools are now hearing about it with this having been one, and I expect that we'll see it popping up in many schools in Renfrewshire, and I think that's to be welcomed. Just massive congratulations to the teams involved, and also to the young people for getting involved. These are young people who have often had adverse life experience, and trying new things can be scary, and them jumping in and getting involved and enjoying themselves has such good outcomes, so I'm very proud of them as well, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Jamie Maguire.
Thank you, Provost. I would just like to reiterate what Councillor Shaw and Councillor Marie Hughes has been saying as well, I'm delighted to extend my warmest congratulations to Kirtland Youth Primary School and One Wren's active schools team for their outstanding success in winning the Corporate Parent Positive Partnership category at the Who Cares Scotland Parent Awards. Their dedication to supporting care experienced young people through the weekly club is truly commendable, fostering an inclusive and active environment, and it is really helping the opportunities of these young people and giving them, a real chance. All those involved at Kirtland Youth, through, the leadership team, Mrs. McKechnie, to right down to the bottom, have done an absolute fantastic job, and they are really, that's really highlighted by winning this award. It shows the immense value of the partnership, and the children's involvement reflects the positive impact, this initiative has had. So massive congratulations to all those involved for making such a meaningful difference to our community. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Councillor Maguire. I've just made the assumption that there are no amendments, but I have to formally ask. No amendments. Okay, can I agree the motion? Yeah. Okay, we're on to item 15. Motion 6, that's Councillors Andy Doig and Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks very much, Provost. I'd be very surprised if there's no amendments to this motion, but I'll try and outline the logic and the basis as to why I felt it was important, Provost. I think I'd like members to think about paragraph 2 as to what the context is here now. Council recognises efforts by central government in recent years, both in Holyrood and Westminster, by all parties to meet social housing demand, but sadly recognises that radical action is required. Now, in 2019, in the sort of dying days of our premiership, Theresa May did lift the housing revenue account cap, which did help a lot of local authorities in England to look at building more council houses. The SNP government of Scotland have got a good record, there's no two ways about it. In terms of council house building, there was an article in the Housing Specialist Press in 2019. I think Midlothian Council, round about 2018, 2019, had actually built more council houses than the whole of London, which showed that disproportionately the situation was improving. But if you look at the latest statistics in Scotland, in the national newspaper yesterday, council house building, social house building in Scotland is down by 17% this year, Provost, and homelessness is up 12%. So despite the efforts, I think there is a consensus across the political divide, if you could say, that we need to tackle the demand for more council houses for people who need and want it. There really is. I mean, I've spoken to other Johnson councillors, and for me, if you've got a big town centre in your ward, but it's not exclusive, it can also be the villages in my ward as well. But the hardest cases I find to deal with are when you've got young mothers, and often tends to be young mothers who are on the phone, who are stuck in a private let somewhere. The let has been cancelled, or it will be cancelled. They're desperate to get a council tenancy, and there's nothing there for them. And I find that the most difficult kind of case to deal with as a councillor. And I'm pretty sure that is not unique to my ward. It'll be a story that I think most of the elected members in this chamber could talk about. So that was the motivation behind this. I'd also talk to the bullet point 3, which is looking at giving local authorities as much fiscal freedom as possible to borrow to build new social housing, because whilst the Tory government in 2019 did take a positive step, it's fairly clear, and I've been trying to do more research about this, and I'm looking maybe to councillors Mags McLaren, Kenny McLaren, I believe Councillor McCulloch, who probably know more about housing policy than me, but I'm pretty certain the reason that this commission is on a UK basis, I think looking at giving local authorities the fiscal freedom to borrow to build, I think would be a decision that would probably need to be taken in Westminster, because the devolved parliaments don't have that power. So that's the reason for why that's in. I think the principles are there. In terms of The remit, I mean, it's not an exclusive remit to the bullet points that are there. There's no point in setting up a commission if you don't allow it to say what it wants to say. And I think it's something, it's a debate that we need to have positively, Provost. And I look forward to contributions from across the chamber. Thanks.
Thanks, Provost. The amendment is pretty simple. It's just to delete one of the bullet points, the bullet point to repeal the right to buy legislation in England. I would just like to remind Councillor Andy Doig that he's a councillor here in Renfrewshire in Scotland. For someone that's, you know, sorry, I would remind that I'm just trying to talk here. Is that okay? Sorry, Provost. I was getting interrupted there. So yeah, as I say, I would like to remind him that he's a councillor here in Renfrewshire in Scotland. For a person that has campaigned passionately and for a long time about Scottish independence and for Westminster to stay out of Scotland's backyard, I find it astonishing that then you would then put a motion to Renfrewshire Council going into local affairs in England, which we have no control over and shouldn't have control over. It's for the people. For local
sorry, you as a unionist should object.
Mind that I'm trying to talk.
You'll get an opportunity when.
Yeah, I thought you'll get to sum up. Yeah, thanks very much. I'm used to getting heckled from the left, literally. So yeah, that is a very simple. I don't think that, and broadly going on to the motion presented by Councillor Doig, I mean, the Conservative group don't disagree. This is something that could be looked at. Obviously, housing's devolved. There are parts that that Westminster control, and yeah, so have a UK-wide. Have a look at it, it's great, but I think we should keep out of English county council matters and let them decide if they want to the right to buy. We see Nicola Sturgeon's family profiteered from it and then stopped everyone else from doing it. So Nicola Sturgeon stopped. So that's all I'd like to say. Thanks.
Try not to raise issues relating to people that are not in the chamber and can't answer to your allegations. Thank you.
It's widely reported in the press.
Is it all the press?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Leishman.
Provost, I'll formally second Councillor Graham's motion and I'll come in if I think I have to. Thank you.
Just alert me if you want to speak. Okay, we have Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Neil Graham, strangely enough, touched on some of the issues we had with it. I did try and speak with the mover.
Sorry. What's going on? Oh no, they're not. I just invited her in. I invited her to fight with Neil. We think it might be Councillor Mylet trying to get in or being expelled or whatever.
Just make sure. It's not me.
Somebody else. Maybe Councillor McDonald, Provost.
Okay, can we check? I don't want to carry on without checking that this is secure. Is all okay? Okay, Dave has reassured me everything's fine. Councillor Nicholson. Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks, Provost. Some of the we just couldn't overcome some of the fundamental issues with this motion, and as Councillor Graham actually touched on some of the points, and our amendment reflects that as well. I don't think it's appropriate for this body to start talking about, you know, local councils in England. We wouldn't like it if they started talking about our powers as a local authority, and we should be precious about the authority that we have as councils with regard, particularly with housing and planning, and defending it, because to my mind there's always that pressure and desire for central government to suck powers into themselves. So that's one of the fundamental key reasons why we couldn't agree to this motion the way it's drafted. I understand it's about the fiscal powers, but an awful lot hanging off all that, which just wasn't acceptable and not being able to change. And I think as well from some of the bullet points in it as well, you know, examine the need for land reform to maximise brownfield sites in urban areas. Now, I'm not going to accuse the mover of picking urban areas, but we need housing in green. We need housing in villages as well. So to specify just urban areas, why should they take all the housing and the social housing? Social housing has to be where people need it. So again, that's a fundamental issue with us with regards to how we deliver social housing. This council's got a very good record in delivering affordable housing. One of the biggest brownfield sites, obviously, in Europe was the ROS site, and we've got social housing there as well as part of that development. So that's one of the sort of points when you go through it, is to say, well, we can't agree with that. And also the fact about planning. Scotland's got a very unique and distinct planning system, completely distinct and unique from England to a certain extent. I'm not coming at this from a perspective of a Scottish nationalist or anything else, but from a local government perspective, we can't have central government, whoever they are, having remit and roles over determine how our local planning policies are made. We defend that rigorously as well from the Scottish government. So we really can't be here sitting saying, well, let the UK government come in and tell us how our planning system should work, or where the brownfield site should be, or tell us we need to deliver X number of brownfield sites. So there's fundamental issues with this about principles and about defending the right of this council and dealing with its own affairs. But our amendment goes the way of calling upon resources being provided to deliver the housing that the people in Renfrewshire are needing. And I know the stats in the press recently is about homelessness and numbers. We've got a very good record in that as well. Unfortunately, it's a fact of life. But if we're really just talking about money, the motion should have been about money and resources, because we can deliver, you know, we can deliver the housing. We just need the money to do it with. That's what it all comes down to, Provost. So our amendment's very clear in defending the right of this council with regards to its own powers with housing and planning, but also calling for more resources to deliver the housing that our people need. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Yeah, just formally second, Provost. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Colin McCulloch.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks for bringing me in. I was interested to see the motion from Councillors Doig and Devine. I do welcome convergence in terms of housing policy in the UK, and for a long time there's been divergence. We've moved in different directions. In Scotland, we abolished the right to buy after suspending it for a while, and obviously that's a great thing, and it was long overdue. But in England, it is wildly popular, the right to buy, particularly if you're in the southeast of England. It is potentially the only way that you'll ever own a home. If you're a social tenant, you'll never be able to afford the massive deposits. So I think to repeal it without having other mitigations in place, it might do more harm than good, but I'm open to persuasion on that as well. We'd like to see some sort of convergence across the UK as in planning reform, to make sure we're building houses of all tenures in all areas. And Councillor Nicholson made a great point about not just focusing on urban sites, that we would definitely need to focus on rural areas as well. And that, to me, that's where the reforms have to happen. A housing commission wouldn't have powers really over the devolved administrations or the local authorities, so it would be more of a talking shop than an actual statutory authority that was going to drive any meaningful change. So I'm minded to agree in sympathy with the motion, but I think the amendment from the SNP group has more substance to it, so I would be more inclined to back that. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor McCulloch. Councillor Ian McMillan.
Yeah, certainly when we seen the motion, we were, quite agreeable to it. I think we know that housing is
a bit of crisis at the moment. Certainly just not enough houses for people, whether it's in the social sector or it's in the private sector. There's just not enough. And any houses you see being built for private let, for private sale, get snapped up right away. You very seldom see houses lying empty for any length of time. And I'm sure, not that I want to speak for every councillor, but you know, as soon as an empty house comes up in their area, you know, you get phone calls. Can I get that house? Can I get that house? You know, it's really tough out there now for a lot of people. Not just necessarily people who are unfortunately homeless, but for people who just, you know, want another house, a bigger house, a smaller house, whatever. It's really hard, and I know that some councils not so far away have declared emergencies, housing emergencies. The Scottish Government's declared a housing emergency. So I appreciate, you know, that Councillor Doig and Councillor Devine have brought this to the council. I certainly have a lot of sympathy with any campaign in England about ending the right to buy. I was certainly involved in a campaign before when I was convener of housing to end the right to buy, and I'm glad that was implemented at a later stage. I think the right to buy, it did benefit some people, including some people in my own family, but it's been an unmitigated disaster. And that might well be with the benefit of hindsight, but it certainly has been. We are picking up the pieces from that policy at the moment. And I know sometimes it might not be appropriate for us to comment in English housing, but it's certainly somebody who's proud to be Scottish and British. I'm more than happy to comment in England, and I wish the campaigners in England well in trying to end the right to buy. But as Colin, our housing spokesperson, has said, I think we'll be quite happy to support the amendment, although we do have a lot of sympathy what Councillor Doig and Councillor Devine have moved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McMillan. Okay, I'm going to ask if any of the seconders wish to speak before I bring in Councillor Doig to sum up. No? Pardon?
He said he'd like to go home before it starts.
I'll do my best. Andy, Councillor Doig.
I'd like to sum up.
Get 1 minute.
Okay, right. I'd like to sum up, Provost, and I'd like to thank. I'd like to first of all apologise to Councillor Neil Game for interrupting him. Neil, just my devilishness got the better of me, but I apologise for interrupting. I won't do it again. Right, regarding the two amendments, I'll deal with Councillor Graham's amendment, Neil Graham's amendment first. I think you should maybe have a memo organised for your boss, Councillor Graham Russell Finlay, if he does get the Scottish Tory leadership, to remind him that in the 1950s, when the Scottish Tories got more than 50% of the vote, they supported council housing. And in fact, I think the highest number of council houses built in the UK, I think, was in the early 50s, or sometime in the 50s under a Harold McMillan government. So you might want to remind him that, you know, the right to buy policy historically, as Councillor McMillan has said, has been an unmitigated social disaster for housing policy. So I also would like to make the point, I'm surprised, as somebody who did vote yes in 2014, but obviously I'm a Democrat, so I respect the democratic decision of the Scottish people. So I feel a bit like I feel I've got the right to comment. I mean, what happened, Provost, to the slogans from 2014 about don't leave the union, don't leave the union, lead the union? But that love's gone now. I'm trying to lead the union, and Councillor Graham's getting on to me. You just can't win, Provost. You can't have it both ways. I have to lead the union, then I get criticised for comment about English local authorities. Goodness sake. Reluctantly, I'll accept the SNP amendment. Can I pick up on Councillor Nicholson's point about brownfield sites? You're like myself, Ian, you're a village councillor. I'm well aware of the challenges that our villages face in Renfrewshire in relation to the lack of social housing. But it's a point that was made by one of the speakers earlier today about I think it was Councillor Bruce McFarlane, who spoke about Paisley's town centre and the importance of getting people living in town centres. And that's why I think brownfield sites are so particularly important. If we're going to regenerate our towns and cities, you need to get back to what the situation was 100, 150 years ago when people in large numbers actually live in them. I think I'll accept the SNP amendment, but I struggle a wee bit because, as Councillor McCulloch said, a commission has got no fiscal powers to undermine the rights of the devolved parliaments, and it certainly was not my intention to do so. It would be a bit like when the British Irish Council has a meeting and you have the UK government and the heads of the devolved parliaments and the Taoiseach of the Republic of Ireland sit there and they have a discussion about matters of common interest. It would be no less or no more than that, and that's a good thing. So, but I'll accept the amendment. I feel the consensus. There's a massive wave of Labour and SNP. Imagine being able to get Labour and SNP, Provost, to actually agree on the same side against me. How can I overcome this? How can I possibly overcome this? So I'll accept the amendment. I need more members. Come and join the Rebel Alliance. Thanks. Bye.
Are you accepting the Conservative amendment?
No.
You didn't say that. You weren't clear. Okay, we're clear now. Okay. So he's accepted the motion from the SNP. So it will be the motion as amended against the amendment from the Conservative Party. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct, Provost. However, I just want to make it clear actually what that does in terms of the wording. So the Conservative amendment effectively was to delete one bullet point from Councillor Doig's motion, and therefore the Conservative amendment now effectively has to be viewed as Councillor Doig's entire wording less that one bullet point, because otherwise this would not make any sense. So we would be moving to a roll call vote. The vote will be Councillor Doig's amendment, seconded by Councillor Devine, as now amended in its entirety by Councillor Nicholson's amendment, against the amendment by Councillor Neil Graham, seconded by Councillor Leishman. Could members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor Andy Doig's motion or Councillor Neil Graham's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Ailey Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Devine. Motion. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour. Motion. Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Hood.
Motion.
Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Motion.
Councillor McDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment.
Councillor Maguire. I think Councillor Maguire's left the meeting. Councillor McGurk.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Motion.
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Rodden.
Motion.
Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Steele.
Motion.
And Councillor Hannigan's voted for the motion. I have 34 for the motion, 4 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. It's my intention to take this next motion, here motion 7, and then have a 15-minute break if everyone's all right with that. I don't want to stop for a full lunch hour and then have to come back again. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll just keep going. Yeah. So 15-minute break after this, and that allows people to eat if they need to eat for any medical condition or anything. Okay, motion 7 is Councillors Leishman and Graham. Oh. We're on motion 7.
Item 16, free school meals.
You're not getting a gold star today, Councillor Graham. Okay, Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I should say that the promise of a 15-minute break has motivated me to rush through this. Okay, let me go for it. It has been bad enough over the years of SNP government to observe the continuous decline in educational outcomes for our children, but there was going to be some cold comfort in knowing that our children would at least be fed while they were being educated. This was a promise made by the Scottish Government, a promise that received cross-party support in Parliament, and yet it is the SNP that has decided to abandon it, even against the will of Parliament, as indicated in a recent vote. Now, I have heard that it's not been, quote, abandoned. It's a question of word choice. I've heard other words like postponed, deferred, suspended, shelved. To parents, this will make very little difference. It's a case of tomatoes or tomatoes to them, because essentially the result will be the same. Their children will not get the promised meals. There is an upcoming motion from 2 SNP councillors about food poverty, and all I can say to that is seriously. How is taking food from school children supposed to help mitigate food poverty? This is yet another example of the SNP's famous cognitive dissonance, their astonishing ability to hold 2 contradictory beliefs in their minds at the same time. Honestly, I hope this council will agree to urge the Scottish Government to honour its promise. Let's continue the rollout of free school meals for all primary school children as was initially planned. That's all from me, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Councillor Graham?
Second and reserved right to come back in, thanks.
Okay, do we have any amendments?
Yes, we do.
We do have 2 amendments, I believe, been sent to you.
Okay. One addition. Addition from Councillor McMillan and an amendment from Councillor Campbell.
We have an addition from Councillor McMillan. Is that correct?
And an amendment from Councillor Campbell.
An amendment from Councillor Campbell. Who's your seconder, Councillor McMillan? Okay, it's Councillor Graham and Councillor McMillan. Councillor Campbell, who's your seconder?
Councillor Audrey-Doig.
Councillor Audrey-Doig. I know, I'm not going to start until it's through to you. Just. Mm-hmm.
Circulated.
Okay, it's circulated now. Okay, Councillor Graham, do you want to?
Yes, sorry.
Amendment?
Yeah, it's an addition, actually.
It's an addition.
Yeah, it's an addition. It's really just insert after the final motion paragraph, to continue to set the sentence on to say, and to commit adequate capital funding to Renfrewshire Council to enable the school kitchens upgrade required to deliver universal free school dinners in all Renfrewshire primary schools. So it's just a run on from that end of that sentence, if that's acceptable.
Councillor Leishman, do you want more time to consider that addition?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Provost. I don't know what happened there. I am content to accept Councillor Gillian Graham's addition
Okay.
Thank you.
Ian, do you want to come in just now?
Just very briefly, we did have a conversation about this at last week's leadership board, and Councillor Nicholson clarified the situation that it's only been postponed and not cancelled. So I think we need to be ready here in Renfrewshire when that money does become available and our kitchens are up to a certain standard, so we can go as soon as possible. I think our kids certainly deserve that. It's a pity that some of the P6 and P7 who are currently P6 and P7 will be losing out. So it might be a few years before people actually do benefit from this policy. But as I say, I take Councillor Nicholson at his word that it's going to happen at some point, and we just need to be ready. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. I think for obvious reasons, I think that there's a bit of an elephant in the room with Tories talking about the moral compass on aspects when austerity has been their main agenda, which George Osborne is very proud of and continues to express, and also likens himself to Rachel Reeves, which obviously she's not here to defend herself in the room. I'm not being critical of her. I'm just making the point about George Osborne's comments, making that clear. He's also not here to defend himself, but he puts himself out there in the public. I'm quoting him from his podcast. In essence, you'll see in the main body of the text that has been proposed by the SNP. I think something that is missing from this, and this is because I genuinely think that Conservatives don't understand that eradicating child poverty cannot be looked at in silo of one singular matter. Nobody in this chamber has ever advocated for children having to go hungry. I think that there are many records across the leadership board, education, ILE, when we've spoke about kitchen provision, where people have all resonated with the aspect of the general concept of the point. However, there are facts which I did express in the leadership board, and I'm going to reiterate it here because I feel it is important that it has to be recognised, which is that there is a funding gap of £256 million. The Scottish Government has to find savings of £500 million. The Scottish Government, as a devolved nation, cannot go past zero. It has to balance the books. It's a fundamental part of devolved government. We are part of a UK government process and system in which our parliaments have to adhere to those rules. So therefore, we do not have the ability to borrow. We do not have the ability to negotiate our financial lines. And it's made incredibly difficult when that financial position is changed further. So therefore, we don't have a choice. So regardless who would be sitting at the helm of that, even though it is, yes, I accept it is the SNP in government in Scotland, that is a fundamental aspect that you would have to do. And that is why this system does not work. It's like the House will always win, Provost. That is ultimately the situation we're faced with here. Unless there is a change to the fiscal rules to allow for devolved nations to be able to react with fiscal capability to then be able to fund such aspects that are within our policies, within direction of the will of the Parliament, within the direction of the government. Until those aspects are changed, then we're going to be stuck in this picture and cycle, and inevitably childhood poverty will not be eradicated within the current rules because the system is not set up to lift people out of poverty. It's to keep the richest in charge and keep the richest pockets full. It's as simple as that. There are steps that have been disappointing that we wanted to see change, such as the 2-child cap. Rachel Reeves made the very same point about financial aspects not being able to lift at this moment. That is a political choice as much as any other. But there's no commitment to abolish that. And there seems a magical word of that we require growth, yet there is no plan for what that growth is. And following Labour conference and Rachel Reeves in her position as the Chancellor, which I do welcome the first female Chancellor, I might add, while I'm talking about that. But I don't welcome the fact there wasn't much promise about what this growth looks like and how that will best serve the people of the United Kingdom. I don't believe that the people of Scotland are best served in that respect. There are decisions that our Scottish Government are making that are decisions, like you say, are political decisions that you make in terms of the decisions you make while you're in government. And our government has put in the Scottish Child Payment, which puts money straight into the pockets of the families that need it the most. You speak to any child poverty related charity, be it the Roundtree Foundation, the Child Poverty Action Group, many others, big and small, they will tell you the one action that you can take that is apolitical is giving that money directly to families, to individuals, to the carers, and directly to those children in their pockets. That is a singular one item, one thing that you can do that will make a difference at this point in time. So though we have aspirations to eradicate child poverty, which absolutely must be a priority, the steps to us doing that, I believe the Scottish Government has got its finger completely on the pulse of what makes a difference right here, right now. And I look forward to seeing the UK Labour Government showing us what steps they're going to take to do what we're already doing. Because as far as I'm concerned, the SNP will always put the people of Scotland first, and we will continue to do so. And this SNP administration will continue to do the same. That means that we will put the pressure on both governments to ensure that this is dealt with, because ultimately it's a strand. It is not a silo issue, and we have to work together to make sure that this is dealt with effectively and not just for political punches. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Doig?
Formally second and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay. I appreciate the point you made there, Michelle, about when you mentioned George Osborne. Just to set the record straight, I have no problems with all of you tearing strips off each other. I don't care about that. That's politics. That's what happens. What I don't like is when people raise personal issues about people, especially their families. So that's what I don't like, and I will not allow to happen in the chamber. So I just wanted to make that clear. Councillor Jill Graham.
Thanks very much, Provost. It was just to talk to the addition. I take Councillor Campbell's point that governments have to cut the cloth accordingly. But of course, that's when priorities need to be identified and committed to. And that's why I'm genuinely saddened that this issue there's been years of broken promises on free school meals. And that now the Scottish Government has finally stated it will not deliver in this Parliament on its 21 manifesto pledge for universal school meals, free school meals for all primary pupils. I am genuinely upset and saddened by this, as are many people. It's particularly concerning because the Scottish Children's Commissioner has just recently said that going to school hungry is not only a barrier to learning and educational achievement, but it can also severely impact development in childhood and into adulthood. That's something I wasn't aware of. National statistics, as we know, show that a quarter of Scotland's children live in poverty. 1 in 4 of our children. 70% of these children live in working families. Thousands of our own primary 6 and primary 7 pupils are the same children, and therefore they often don't qualify for free school meals. And as a result, families are struggling. And I know we all know that, but they're struggling, and sadly, some children arrive at school hungry. Everybody here knows, and all the evidence tells us, that children don't learn at school when they're hungry. And I know anecdotally, and I suspect others here do as well, the schools often have snacks set aside for children, and sometimes they're even paid for by the staff, because that shows how much they care for our children. Council should write to the Scottish Government as a matter of urgency, expressing its significant concerns around school hunger and urging it to deliver on its manifesto commitment to provide universal free school meals for our primary 6 and 7 pupils. And we've also suggested that the Scottish Government should commit some adequate capital funding to Renfrewshire Council, so that when universal school meals do kick in, our school kitchens are upgraded to the required requirements to deliver, to ensure that no primary age child in Renfrewshire goes to school hungry. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, I know we're bandying about here with the politics of all this, but I think we're all on the same page. We all want to see the expansion of free school meals to all the primary school children in the area. That's something that this council is committed to delivering as well. And we are in the hands of other forces with regards to resources to carry that out. So we're not disputing the same sort of policy areas, we're just disputing the ways and means it's been done. Just with regards to, I mean, I read this motion and I thought, somebody who wrote this, I thought it was Charles Dickens or something, using words like welfare assistance and all that went out of the ark. I mean, as someone who had a buff-coloured dinner ticket when I was in primary school in the 70s, I mean, I didn't have shame and stigma. I just seen it as a lunch and a dinner. Other people put the shame and stigma on you. And that didn't feel that at all when I was at school. And obviously somebody who wrote this, there's no concept whatsoever how school meals are delivered. anymore. You know, there's no queues formed and somebody's doling out a bowl of gruel, you know, and please sir, can I have some more attitude? There's no differentiation made between people receiving meals, etc. So I think you want to drag yourself into the 21st century here and stop using Dickensian methodology and words. And you also mentioned about food poverty and then criticised an upcoming motion about that. You also don't understand the difference between food poverty and school meals. They're not the same thing. You know, food poverty and school meals. School meals is well proven, as Councillor Graham mentioned, to aid pupils who may, for circumstances at home, not be getting the appropriate hot lunches or meals and breakfast clubs that we run as well. And it does aid and stimulate education, because that's the main reason for school meals being given to school children, is to try and make sure that every child has got a hot meal in them and it helps them to achieve better in school. That's the principle. It's not to alleviate food poverty. So I think the mover really needs to sort of gen up and don't just keep regurgitating whatever's churned out by Tory HQ on this, and try and look at it as a local context. I mean, on the amendment, I mean, it's entirely within the gift of any councillor in this council to put forward an amendment to say we should do X, we should build all the kitchens to X and Y and Z. Yes, we could, and we will do all that. But again, it comes back, and I have to be born about this, has come back to you're free to put that in your budget as well, because there's a cost attached to that which you haven't explained where that cost is coming from. You know, so this council tries to ensure it maximises the external funding we have to deliver these services. If you're saying to us today you want the council to do it off its own back, etc., then I think it's incumbent upon you to explain where those resources. You've just read the fiscal report earlier in the day. Explain where that comes from. It's easy to say, yes, we want you to put all these kitchens in, etc., with no cost attachment and all the rest of it. As I say, I'm quite happy to come back to that item and have a discussion about that, exactly what our programme is. And our amendment clearly explains what the provision is for our primary school children just now, and it will be extended to primary 6 and 7 through receipt of certain benefits. So at the end of the day, as I say, we are in the hands of other forces. And if people want to deny that the Scottish Government is being sort of hamstrung by the financial decisions of Westminster, that's up to them to be in denial about it. But the reality is, there's a COSLA meeting tomorrow as well, and on the agenda, every meeting is always about the distribution of finance and free school meals and all the rest of it. So that's the reality of life, dealing with those issues, I said. But as a council, we're quite proud of the fact that we're extending free school meals out. We're keen to do it. And we want to work in partnership with the Scottish Government as well. And I understand the policy on this, but we're all on the same page with it, making sure that we can deliver that service, Provost. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Andy Steele.
Thank you, Provost. Very briefly, I'll be supporting the amendment. I think it reflects the position very accurately, and I wouldn't be able to support the motion as put forward, largely because if to deal with the question of contradictory positions or cognitive dissonance, I think it was referred to, if you're representing a party which imposes the two-child cap on benefits, you're really not in a good place to come and start laying down the law about what you're not doing to other people, what you are or what you're not doing. Councillor Campbell has laid out the reasons for that. I can accept those, but I'm more than happy to say publicly in this chamber, I would urge our government in Edinburgh, when they get their budget settlement through, which we've already heard is apparently going to be painful, if it is at all possible to push this up the priorities list, I would very strongly urge them to do it. I don't know that there is no stigma regarding free meals. There certainly was back in the 70s and the 80s when I was getting them. I think universality, that goes back to the point we made about the winter fuel payment. Universalism removes that. Everybody's the same. That's a good thing. You've also got better control, this is a pet hate of mine, of what kids are eating, rather than useless tubs of noodles that litter the streets round about in Ward 8, certainly, and I'm quite sure everywhere else you're getting good food down into these kids. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Steele. Councillor Robert Innes.
Thanks, Provost. It was just to welcome the amendment. I think that Councillor Nicholson is spot on in everything he said there. 20 years ago, I got a dinner ticket, you know. It's moved on so much even from when I was at school. Aye, it's spot on what the amendment says, and I think it's wild for Tories coming with stuff like this. And the understanding of where food poverty is coming from. I mean, kids in poverty aren't going to school and being hungry because the lack of universal school meals, you know. So, and what Councillor Steele said there, we've got a black hole coming from Westminster, from cut from the Labour government. So, I mean, I don't see what would Councillor Leishman cut? What would he cut? There, thank you. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Robert. You kind of broke up a couple of wee bits there, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying, Robert. Okay, Councillor Gillian Graham.
Thanks very much, Provost. I think it was just to Councillor Nicholson. I think maybe you misunderstood the addition, and maybe I stumbled my words when I was describing it. We're not saying that Renfrewshire Council should find the money for capital investment. We're saying that we should write to Scottish Government to commit adequate capital funding to Renfrewshire Council to enable the school kitchen upgrade. I know some of this is ongoing and some really good work getting done, but we could always do some extra cash. So it wasn't me saying find the money in our budget. It was saying let's get the Scottish Government to help us. Thanks.
Sorry, Provost, I accept that. That was an error on my part.
Aye, that's fine.
Assuming. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Do Councillor McMillan or Doig, do you want to come in as seconders? Okay, you're all right. Okay, so you're not accepting the addition. You are accepting the addition. Are you accepting the amendment? Okay, we'll go to the vote. You can sum up, yes.
I really do promise, Provost, I will be quick on this, but I have a couple of comments to make. Councillor Innes did ask me what I would cut. That's not what the motion is about, what I would cut. But we can have a discussion about that at another point if you absolutely like. But I have a confession to make, Provost, and it will perhaps cause me and another person some embarrassment. But the Dickensian language, this was getting, I have to admit, I was burning a bit of midnight oil when I was writing this, this motion, and lazily I picked it verbatim from Nicola Killeen. So if you want, I can definitely pass on your comments about her word usage to her. I'll send her an email saying she really needs to upgrade it. I haven't read Dickens since I was in school, but I'm not going to take that as a criticism of my my written English, but I will perhaps take it as a criticism of a wee bit of cheeky plagiarism. But yes, the wording is almost exactly from Nicola Killeen. As about the reduction of shame and stigma and that archaic Victorian expression, welfare assistance, yeah, I cheated. I took it from Ms. Killeen. As to Councillor Campbell's explanation of her amendment, she really didn't mention the topic a great deal. She went into a lot of other areas of poverty, and that is definitely worth talking about. But she really didn't talk a great deal about the free school meals. I also should quote again Nicola Killeen again, who I plagiarised. £400 approximately per child per year this will cost. By the way, Nicola Killeen is appointed by the Scottish Government. So is the Scottish child benefit payment going to equal £400 per child per year? If not, then I think it will still cause some hardship for families. And my last comment is really, I've presented obviously a couple of motions, a couple of arguments today, and so far I've had Liz Truss and George Osborne thrown at me. I'm really beginning to wonder how far back we're going to go and if I'm going to have to defend Heath or McMillan. Yeah, Thatcher's been yes, I know.
And makes an appearance there, Councillor.
Yeah, and let's not forget Disraeli's, he said back in the day round about Dickens's time. Right, please let me finish. Yeah, we could really go back far, and I could go back far with Labour and SNP politicians as well with what they've said and done. But I'd actually rather stay on topic. Listen, if you want to talk to me about political history, it's one of my favourite topics. I'm open for it all the time, and I'll talk your faces off about it. And it's just so interesting to me. I'm a total nerd that way, but. Really, maybe we can stay on topic and talk about politicians that are still perhaps serving. I think that would be more relevant. If you will allow me 20 seconds, Provost, and this is off topic, and I want to respond to what Councillor Andy Doig said earlier, because I might not get the opportunity again. I don't know how he meant it. I think it was as a compliment. But what he said is the I think he did mean to compliment me, and I'll take it that way. And I can't wait for me to send a clip to Russell Findlay about it, just to be saying that I'm more or less some sort of philosophical doppelganger. But Councillor Doig, you really did lift my spirits. That's the nicest compliment I've had in this chamber in 2.5 years. Anyway, my motion stands, and yeah.
We always aim to please. Okay, we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion by Councillor Leishman, seconded by Councillor Neil Graham, which has an addition at the end of it, moved by Councillor Gillian Graham. And we have an amendment from Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Audrey Doig. Could members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Leishman's motion or Councillor Campbell's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Amendment.
Councillor Aileen Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Burns.
Amendment.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Amendment.
Provost Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Andy Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Audrey Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilmour.
Motion.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Amendment.
Councillor Innes.
Amendment.
Councillor Leishman.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor James McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Max McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McCulloch. Councillor McCulloch. Councillor McDonald.
Sorry, motion. Sorry, my mic was stuck.
Thanks. Councillor McDonald. Thank you.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Amendment.
Councillor McGonigal.
Motion.
Councillor McGurk.
Amendment.
Councillor McMillan.
Motion.
Councillor McNaughton.
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Roden.
Amendment.
Councillor Shaw.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Steele.
Amendment. Apologies, Provost.
Councillor Hannigan has voted for the amendment. Yeah. 16 for the motion, 22 for the amendment. The amendment is carried.
Okay. Yeah, so we're going to break now until just 5 minutes to 15 minutes you have. Well, I'll wait for you. I'm going to go and get a coffee too.
That's going in for that's going.